The nation is concerned. In studio, I'm joined by Cornelius Oduor, Deputy Executive Director, Kenya Human Rights Commission, and as well, Honorable James Gakuya, who's the Embakasi North Member of Parliament and the Trade Chair of the Trade Committee of the National Assembly. Morara Omoke, who is an advocate, has not been able to join us this morning physically, but he'll be joining us shortly virtually. And now to just dissect the post-mortem of the Nane demos. Cornelius, 174 protesters were arrested by the police, including journalists, and scores have also been injured. Perhaps what are the latest, numbers from the Kenya Human Rights Commission?
Yeah, we belong to what we call the situation room. That is a collective effort by civil society actors or human rights defenders to try and monitor and assess the situation. I think, as you rightly put it, in excess of 77 people were already arrested by close of business yesterday, most of them being young people who were found in the streets and arrested on claims of being part of demonstration. Now, this is very worrying because the law only requires that you inform the police of your intentions to protest. It doesn't say that you go and seek permission. And what the police is supposed to do is to facilitate the protest. Now, what we saw yesterday is a lockdown of the CBD by police security agencies. So where does that put us as a country in terms of our right to express ourselves? It tells you that yesterday it was a protest by the security agencies, and it's total lockdown, and it's a violation of Kenyan right because people are not able to do their businesses because of heavy presence of security personnel along the streets of Nairobi. So I think we are not getting it right as a country in terms of facilitating the exercise of our rights to protest and expression. So I think we need to do it better because what the police was supposed to do was to ensure that they guard property and ensure that those who want to go about their businesses are able to go about their business. But what did you see yesterday? The whole CBD was closed. Nobody was able to access it. People had to walk long distances. The matatus were not able to operate freely. The border borders were not able to operate freely. So was that what is expected of the security apparatus in terms of facilitating the right to protest? It was actually curtailing everybody's right to move around and do their businesses, as it were.
In fact, as my director Joanne will just show you on this image, one of our guests who was here yesterday, that is Steve Mbogwa, council member, Law Society of Kenya, was among those who were arrested immediately after he left from our K24 studios and joined the protesters, in the streets of Nairobi. And those are actually several advocates who were arrested and they were actually in the police cells, that is the Central Police Station, but around 9 p.m. after intervention by the Law Society of Kenya, they were released. You can see there is the LSK Vice President who was there to ensure that they are all released. Once again, one of our guests is in specs carrying a flag there. Steve Mbogwa, council member, Law Society of Kenya, was among those who were arrested. He was a guest right here on K24 that is yesterday, and he spent most of the day in the police cells after being arrested while demonstrating. Honorable James Gakuya, of 174 being arrested, you saw how the city looked like. The PSVs could not even access the CBD. For businesses that had opened, they were forced to close down by the police, not the protesters. Sitting from the trade committee, chair capacity, is the government not sabotaging its own economy?
Joe, let me just state it very clear that the government has its mandatory duty to protect people, constitution, and properties. And let me tell you, there is no any single right for you to humiliate a businessman who has worked up to do business. You need to protect him. But forcing him to close the shop, that tells you, then in that particular case, you are using what we call extraordinary powers to force people out of their business. One, there is no government which is ready to compensate you tomorrow for that particular day that has got lost. And therefore, the government should protect you to do business. And in like case of yesterday, there were no queues. I was in the town. I was in town almost the whole day. And there was no any single signs of such a serious negative demonstrations. I also want to say, once we push and scare, we are scaring traders. We are scaring investors. And therefore, losing one day as a country is a big day at this critical time when we are in a crisis of economy. It's a rare case that we should make sure that we are not losing any single day. That's a working day. In that particular day, we should raise our revenue, we should raise our taxes, and fill the gaps that are actually obviously there. So in this case, I would still point the government to do more extraordinary job to protect businesses, but not to force people out of their businesses. They should be seen protecting you, and if possible, making sure that every shop has an officer outside, if possible, if the business can only operate in such a scenario. But I would say, as of yesterday, there were no serious mess, and therefore the business could go on. But once you put such extraordinary force in the city, everybody will get scared. And in the case of yesterday, the city was deserted. It was like it's a holiday. And that's a very serious sentiment. Going that direction, it tells you, if we give the government a threat of 3 days of demo, then there will be no business in 3 good days. This is right. And I would say, probably, the game of Gen Z is no longer moving to the streets, but forcing the people, the government to go loss of correction revenue. Yes, because like of yesterday, the business were closed and there was no revenue correction, and especially this particular capital city where we generate over 60%. So it may be tactical, and therefore government should play smart so that the youth people cannot pay them before. But because I'm finding a situation where these youths are no longer interested to come to the streets, but actually they can punish the government on that back door.
And it's interesting that both of you have been accused by the government of the day of sponsoring these demonstrations. For Kenya Human Rights Commission, you know, the government said that you are funded by the Ford Foundation to sponsor these demos, and for Honorable Gakuya also on the spot, having been grilled by the DCI. Did you fund the Nane demonstrations? And have you funded
Joe,
the previous demonstrations?
Joe, I can tell you, there is always political chance. And in the case we are in, you are obviously that actually the first sentiment came where that Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and the Deputy President were the one funding these particular demonstrations. And then there was another version where Russia came in, and another version where Ford came in, and all these scenarios, none of them which we have facts on the table. But I can tell you for sure, always when you want to lament something, have facts, have evidence, because in this particular case, anybody who is trying to drag either Uhuru Kenyatta, either Deputy President, or the allies is wrong. And totally wrong, because even snatching our phones, that does not mean there's anything which is special and extraordinary in my phone. Because if I have not been in any connection with those Gen Zs, where do you trap me? Because my phone has never communicated with either. I have no business with them, and I have other business to do. So anybody who might try to relate to me is just wasting time, because there is nowhere you nab me. Where you trap me. And that's the position. And that's the correct position.
It said there are possible treasonous charges against you and
which is
the Deputy
okay.
President.
But let me tell you, There is no way that you can blanketly put on a certain pan, because at the end of the day, you prove with evidence, even though you take me to court. The investigators are not at the end of the road. They have their duties to investigate. If you have evidence of the investigation, take the matter to court. Allow now the judiciary now to do their job. But as we stand, the political chance will move on and will move on. Yes, so they are not coming to an end tomorrow. And we are used to this. They are therefore, we are not those who buys what we call fear. You cannot intimidate me to stop my way.
Who is trying to intimidate you?
No. The system are used to this.
But you are the system.
No, don't worry. The system hands itself. It's obvious it comes.
And Joe,
at what time did the president and his deputy become different, serving different governments? They are both serving the one government, which is Kenya. They swear in to serve Kenya as a nation. And as of we speak, I have not heard Gachagua saying he belonged to another different party. So there is a party leader, and Gachagua is a deputy party leader.
Has the president intervened and perhaps even called you just to find out why you in these tribulations? I mean, you're his friend, you're his ally. You vied on a UDA ticket. You want to be the chairman of the UDA party.
Obviously, Joe, it is clear. Because before you take any single action to a state officer like me, you must consult the head of state.
So he knows what is happening.
You cannot come against me without have consulted him.
So he knows what is happening.
If he was convinced that actually Gakuya was part of it, then we must wait for the investigation to prove.
So the president knows what is happening.
I am sure there is number. Those guys who are well known as NIS, they do what we call that nitty-gritty investigation of information, and they report to him daily.
So you condemn.
So for the NIS to take my name to DCI, they must have reported to their boss first.
So the boss knows what is happening.
Of course, he must be on a clear fashion of what is happening. How comes that actually they can move to invoke the office, the deputy president's office, and start investigation in that particular high-rank office without his knowledge?
Now to Cornelius Oduor, Kenya Human Rights Commission was mentioned. It's among the beneficiaries of the Ford Foundation. Have you been funding these demonstrations? And now, with what Honorable Gakuya said, perhaps there's a change of tactic of now, don't go to the streets. Just let there be silent demonstrations. At the end of the day, the economy is sabotaged. Have you been funding these demos as Kenya Human Rights Commission?
How is agitating for the rights of protesters equal to funding for demonstrations?
You received money from the Ford Foundation.
But we've received money to do what is right, because empowering citizens to express themselves is not tantamount to funding violence or protest. I think what we are seeing is that is a growing pattern of this regime saying one thing today and doing the other thing tomorrow. It's this same government that has acknowledged that they have had the agencies, and they have acknowledged that the issues that have been raised by the young people are of concern, and they are going to act on it. How do they then turn around and say that this thing is not genuine and is being funded by some quarters? So I think they better stick to one principle. If they are genuinely concerned about the issues raised by the agencies, then what the response we expect is to see how the government is coming up with strategies to address those issues. But this idea of diverting attention and starting to feel that it's Ford Foundation, it's Kenya Human Rights Commission, Mara is this politician, I think these are just diversionary tactics. And I think from where we stand, these are issues that have been boiling. And I think this regime came to power on the strength of the promises they made to the young people. The young people have been patient enough for the last 2 years, and they have found out that nothing actually changed. And I think this uprising was bound to happen. I think the best thing they can do is to lay a clear strategy of dealing with the underlying issues instead of using diversionary tactics.
Could it be a tactic by the President William Ruto-led government to scare away such sponsors with goodwill, of course, like the Ford Foundation, and as a result weaken the human rights groups in this country?
Of course, this is not new. This has, we've seen these tactics being used even in previous regimes. But the issues have been there all through. So long as you are not able to deal with the issues effectively, people will always come up and seek to defend their rights. So I think what government must do, and they must learn that these tactics have failed before. They were used by the Kanu regime. We saw them during even the Kenyatta regime, or the Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. Even during the time of ICC, civil society was heavily attacked. Yeah.
And now we rope in Morara Omoke, an advocate. Good morning, Morara.
Good morning, Mr. Church. How are you?
Very well. Your colleagues were also arrested. The Law Society of Kenya Council member, Steve Mbogwa, among others. And we're just, conducting a post-mortem on the Gen Z demos, Nane demos. Are you...
Yes, I'm hearing.
Are you concerned with the arrests that were conducted yesterday by the police, the excess force that was applied to the peaceful protesters?
Yeah, I think yesterday it was very concerning because the policemen seem to have become unhinged. We can see them attacking the media and even those, as you say, peaceful protesters. I think that should not be the case. Yesterday was indeed actually a peaceful march. And the police need to tread very carefully, and the government, because to attack innocent Kenyans who are simply just having a peaceful march, I think that's totally unacceptable.
And the demands by the Gen Zs so far from the advocate's eye, are they being met?
There has been an attempt, but I think I would say that the process was basically politically hijacked. Very unfortunate. Most people are blaming Raila Odinga for this because once he joined hands with President Ruto, then automatically what happened is that he punched at the momentum. But at least one thing we must agree is that the voice has been heard. We now all recognize that the young people's voice cannot be ignored. And I would say some of the politicians seem to have taken it very seriously, especially when you listen to the opposition now led by Kalonzo Musyoka. They have taken that recognition that the young people will be the people deciding the next election.
Are you concerned that perhaps there is doublespeak with the president having said that, or the Azimio principal Raila Odinga, putting forth the demands that if he will join Ruto's cabinet, then there is need to release all those who are abducted, and held in Communicado, and in fact withdraw cases. But at the same time, during the Nane demos, the same government goes ahead and arrests more than 174 persons. Is that doublespeak?
Definitely, because one moment they say you can go ahead and have a peaceful protest, but they are quietly planning to sabotage, to attack the people. So it's clear that the government is not. It's not even hiding. It's not even doublespeak. They are simply being, I think, cavalier about it, and also very, I would say, cheeky. They are not really serious about it. They do not care. And I think now, having brought in the part of the opposition into the government, they feel very much emboldened not to care anymore about what the young people are saying. But as I said, this voice cannot be ignored unless unless the president has accepted that in 2027 he has no chance. When that time comes.
Well, that's Morara Omoke, an advocate. He's still with us via phone link. Honorable James Gakuya, Jimmy Wanjigi, Safina party leader, was raided with a contingent of police. Heavy deployment there. Could we also apply the same energy in seeking the police who have used excessive forces, especially shooting over 60 Kenyans that have so far lost their lives?
Joe, what I can tell you is that we are back to those old days where police could do anything. And I can tell you, at the age we are in, we need to do our investigation more smarter. This issue of the returning politician and taking all manner of actions against them. This is to silence them. Because I don't think that, in fact, there was anything that was very special in Miners Wanjigi residence. Despite that, we are being shown some gadgets there. I don't know how the officers were able to detect them when they are in somebody's compound. this is an issue that he should explain. But how do we know whether they are the ones who planted it? Because they have stormed your residence, they have opened your vehicles without you. How do we know whether they are the ones who planted those gadgets there? So there is a deadliest route that we have taken. And this one is not a good direction we are taking. It is back to those old days when anything can Joe in your residence, and you have been taken to an action of a process of becoming a suspect due to issues that you don't even know. So it's a very critical time that we are in, that the officers are back to where they were those old days, and they can come to my residence, they can plant anything in my residence if they are looking after me. So politically, they are against me. And this is a route that actually politicians are using our officers on a bad way. So it's upon the officers to know whether they are going to serve Kenyans under the roof of the Constitution or it is under the roof of the commander.
Cornelius, Jimmy Wanjigi's lawyer, Willis Otieno, says they have CCTV footage clearly showing what was happening. The tear gas canisters and the communication devices that were recovered, that were so recovered by the police, were even placed there by the same police officers. But we're just trying to look at the whole issue of how the government would apply or deploy more than 30 police officers just to one person. But it becomes so hard for the same government to provide a police officer who was shot down a peaceful protester. Is the government of the day showing goodwill?
Really not, because and this is what we're talking about, accountability on the part of the police or the security agencies, because it tells us that more or less that there's more than what we are seeing, because where it politically matters, they are able to deploy and even show us more than we require. But when they are called now to, like now when you say that more than 61 people have died, doesn't it surprise you that nobody has ever been taken to a court of, in court for these deaths? Why is it that we are fast to execute what is politically expedient and very slow to account for deaths, people who have been maimed, people who have disappeared, abductions? Even CCTV footages have been shown of people who have been abducted, but there has been no word from the same police in terms of where they are with the investigations. So I think this is a bit skewed and a lack of priority in terms of how we deploy resources and our officers when it comes to responding to this protest. I think the police needs to be accountable. They need to act independently. Actions like this only shows you that there is a lot of political manipulation in the whole arrangement of how police is managed.
Marara Moke, as an advocate of the High Court, when we talk about accountability for the 61 families that have lost their kins during these demonstrations with scores injured, in terms of compensation, how much should the government compensate, or must the families sue the government first for them to, give these compensations?
Normally, the quantum of what can be compensated is usually an issue to be decided. If a case goes to the courts, then the courts would decide that on a case by case. But if the government is really serious, then they should sit with these families and see what can be done. Of course, it may be difficult to tell. You cannot quantify the life of a human being, but it would be very helpful if their families can be compensated and give an apology to the entire country for what has happened, and also make sure that the policemen behind it are all held accountable. Many of them have been identified, actually, either through videos posted by the protesters or by the media. So it's not that they are not known, they are very much well known. Personally, I actually know one of the policemen who has been attacking people right here in the CBD, who is from the Central Police Station, and nothing has happened to him. He's always out there harassing protesters, not even during this Gen Z protest, but even in other previous protests.
As an advocate, how should the police arrest someone? I mean, you saw what was happening at Wanjigi's Muthaiga home. Is that you know, the way to approach someone who is allegedly having committed a certain crime?
It's extremely, I think it's extremely reprehensible what is happening at Jimmy Wanjigi's home. I don't think he has done anything wrong other than just simply speaking his mind over the last, he's simply saying what he has been saying over the last 5 or 10 years. So I don't think that what is happening there makes any sense, especially the huge number of policemen there rummaging through a private citizen's home, towing away vehicles in a manner that just simply, I think it's causing unnecessary concerns across the country, because that's not how we should be dealing with the people. And as you said, the amount of effort being exerted in one place is it doesn't make any sense. When we have many serious situations where the policemen are required, when the private citizen complaining about a certain crime, and you can never get even a single policeman to come to the scene of a crime. Normally the reason would be that there is no vehicle, there is no fuel, or the policemen are engaged in some other duty out there. But when something like this happens and you have hundreds of them there, I don't think they have started, there are hundreds of them in that home. It shows that we are not serious in any way as a country, as a government. That's totally, we are a laughing stock at this point in the world.
In terms of rights of such persons and the search warrant, is it a requirement by the law? Wanjigi's lawyer has lamented that there was none that was actually given to them or served.
Yeah, ideally, I mean, that's what they should have done, and there's no urgency for them to be there without the court order. At least, well, if they wanted to enter the home for whatever reason, then there was nothing stopping them from probably sending a few policemen to man the compound, and they can approach the courts and explain, lay a basis why they should be allowed to get into the home, to rummage through a home in the manner in which they are doing it. And this is not the first time it's been done previously. Nothing came of it. So it's simply just harassment, which is, all of us should reject it. And probably it simply says that Wanjigi has been saying the right thing, and that's why his voice is being, there is an attempt to silence him.
Well, at that juncture, we take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll be focusing on, you know, the political side of what has been happening in the country. President William Ruto is facing the Mount Kenya for 3 days. Next week, he will tour Kisii, also for 3 days, even as the Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza has been impeached. On matters economy, the Central Bank of Kenya has now moved to replace the defaced banknotes. It has awarded the contract to a Germany-based money printer. We take a short commercial break. We'll be back with that conversation. Stay tuned.